Welcome back to the Asia Political Review. Today's topic is Russia and its summit in Kazan. What did it get from ASEAN leaders last week? So this was the first time that Vladimir Putin was able to get ahead of all 11 states. This is the first time in a while. And it marked 35 years of Russia-ASEAN relations. And this is a steadily improving in climate. The first summit since began in 1991, gained partner status in 1996. It was elevated to full strategic partnership status in 2018. So this is incrementally getting better and better for Russia. So this forum itself is not new, but the relationship is 35 years old. But this is the first where Timor-Leste was just got joined ASEAN in 2025, was there as well. So the interesting things, the takeaways, are significant. Okay, there are 4 outcome documents that were adopted. First is the Kazan Declaration, which is titled kind of corny. It's Unity and Diversity, 35 years together, and all these outcome documents, no matter what kind of summit you're in, end up with these sort of corny titles. Just this one is interesting because it reaffirms ASEAN centrality. It makes a commitment to the UN Charter and a kind of shaping towards a multilateral, multipolar international order. Second, the comprehensive plan of action for 2026 through 2030 includes a implementation roadmap. It sequences political and security cooperation way ahead of economic and social and cultural cooperation. But the most important two are energy and cultural cooperation. Number 3 is the most important because it is the most specific. It formalizes cooperation for Russia on oil and gas, on renewable energies, for hydrogen, for nuclear power, particularly when it comes to modular, smaller nuclear reactors. And the security language in these documents is interesting because it covers maritime cooperation, protection of undersea infrastructure, biosafety, cybercrime, and it leads to a solidification of ties between Russian-anchored blocs like the Eurasian Economic Union and the better-known Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So here, the timing matters a lot as well because this summit was sandwiched, I suppose, or held sideways to the summit between the G7 and this catastrophe in Iran, where basically a fifth of the world's seaborne oil has been held up, and it equated to basically the largest oil shock since the 1970s. It removed so much of the world's oil, and this is why everyone's paying these huge high prices. But for ASEAN states, these energy independent or energy import dependent states like the Philippines, which had to declare a national energy disaster or an emergency, and Vietnam, fuel shortages and price spikes led to a massive dependence and a very significant reduction in their GDP. So this gave Russia very much a lot of leverage, and it used it to offer short-term and long-term large supply contracts because, hey, the Gulf is no longer reliable. The thing is, as I said before, it's sandwiched right between the G7 meeting, and this is when Russia was kind of pressed hard as all the other G7 countries were signaling that they were going to become closer to Ukraine and they were going to put a tougher line against Moscow. This functions as a counter-narrative to both global South audiences and domestic audiences. Say, hey, Russia is not isolated. They do have diplomatic options, and that sanctions, this massive sanction regime has been imposed since 2022, hasn't really cut off business, and Russia has been lobbying quite heavily for ASEAN countries to sort of get the UN to back down on this sanctions regime. But between this kind of optics layer, there are some very, very interesting developments. So Vietnam is a good one because it is ASEAN's closest economic partner. There's about $5 billion in bilateral trade between them, and they have tried to up that, or trying to up it to about $15 billion. And most importantly, back in March, there was a deal for Russia to construct a nuclear power plant, particularly these very, very important modular reactors. In the Russian media, there's also a lot of talk about de-dollarization and trying to get, which was basically 85% of all trade, settled in Russian rubles. And they're trying to get that now settled into BRICS-backed currencies. And this comprehensive plan of action is trying to get it movement into individual or national currency settlements. Although I think that this is more in rhetoric and more of a starter thing, not really any kind of anything concrete. So on those particular fronts, I don't think this summit in Kazan represents any kind of realignment, and I'll get to why a little bit later on. Look, let's be real about where Russia is, because Russia trade with ASEAN in 2024 is around $18 billion. Russia likes to say it's about $25 billion, but it's not. If you compare that to trade with the United States or trade with China, you can see here that it's significantly lower. So Kazan, whatever it produced, isn't going to produce anything close to what Russia's competitors are doing right now. But the attendance at the summit, I think that tells a different story, because 9 out of 11 members sent their head of state or higher. Only Indonesia, which sent its foreign minister, and Myanmar, which is banned from these gatherings to a certain extent because of the civil war and the coup, only sent a mid-level official. Doesn't mean, though, that Russia doesn't conduct bilateral relations with Myanmar. So, on the security front, I think there's also something more tangible, because if you look at Russian data, if you look at the SIPRI data, SIPRI is an organization that tracks arms sales. It shows that it's the second largest supplier of arms to Southeast Asia, and it has been so for a very, very long time. From 1996 to 2017, it was the top supplier, only behind the United States. To these countries. And it dipped in 2018 and 2022, something like that. But it is still very much a kind of a nominal leader. And in terms of strategic partnership status and things like that, I think that its supply of arms and its defense dependence, these things have held up. That's not to say that I don't think that Russia is what you call corrosive. And it is corrosive to a certain degree because, hey, who are they selling arms to? They're selling arms to the junta, the Myanmar junta. And the Myanmar junta killing its own people. And Myanmar, because of these power-hungry generals, are simply destabilizing the region. This is causing massive impacts in Thailand and in Bangladesh and South Asia, and it's creating quite a mess. So that is handing victories to people that shouldn't be getting victories. So, look, what is it that Russia did win in the big picture? It definitely secured diplomatic capital. It has a functioning multilateral mechanism. It got a nuclear and energy foothold in two specific ASEAN countries, and doing so without a major structural shift in the way ASEAN orients itself economically. Although, look, you're not going to beat the United States, you're not going to beat the EU, and you're certainly not going to trade on par with that of China. So what did Russia get from Kazan? I think in the end, it gets a slight renewal in this 35-year-old relationship. It got a new five-year plan, an energy framework that lands at a moment of very significant vulnerability for all 11 ASEAN countries. And it gets bilateral ties deepened with Myanmar, with Vietnam, with Malaysia. But let's again be real. This is the way the ASEAN does business. For the summit, for them, it demonstrates that it operates within its long-standing principle, which is to hedge. ASEAN leaders will sign comparable documents, joint statements with the United States, with China, with the EU. That's what they'll do it, and they'll do it in the next coming months, in the coming years. That's how they do business. And if you were a student in my foreign policy classes, I'll tell you, hedging is the way to go for a lot of these countries. So this conference this summit was a mechanism by which to increase bilateral trade, and I think Russia got something tangible out of it. And I think if for ASEAN countries, it made them a little bit more attractive. Russia's more attractive, and vice versa. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.